taking kind of a step back, just in general, there are a lot of people listening. So we polled the listeners over just over, going on 5.5 years of having the podcast. And we ask questions, what topics, who do you want on the show? What do you want to hear about? And we hear all great things. We've had topics, suggestions and all that. And the biggest thing is we did not have him on the show, but we listened to another podcast, had the IFA president talk about, most people in their lives, that's a big percentage, have thought about owning a business. So the number they gave, and this is a hard one to figure out, but they came up with a number with 75% of people out there, they gave, and this is a hard one to figure out, but they came up with a number with quarters of that group. So another 75% of that existing group said, as far as their reason goes, and this is the number one reason, they did not know where to start. I find that extremely interesting because we are in the information age. ChatGPT, Gemini, the internet, my gosh, millions and millions of podcasts and TED Talks and all that kind of stuff. And people are almost crippled by the amount of knowledge, the amount of information. I always say, knowledge is not power anymore. Knowledge is useless if not applied in a way, right? It's like, well, I got the best workout, but what good is it if you're not actually doing that workout? So, what advice would you give to someone that is kind of, they want to change, want to explore franchise ownership, but they're almost paralyzed as to where to get started? So just in general terms, what advice would you give to that person?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge that I see from those who are leaving corporate America and joining, whether it's a franchise or just any business, venture at all, it's a mindset shift. And so that's the number one advice I always give to somebody is start listening to podcasts or reading books and then applying, as you were mentioning, applying principles from those, because the mindset changes so drastically. When we're in corporate America, depending on our role, it's daily or it's a weekly focus. Maybe it's a quarterly focus if we're in sales, where we're trying to hit those bonus levels or whatnot. But with business ownership, we might be starting to look at a 10 or 15-year plan or vision, and then we're scaling it back to what are our annual or quarterly goals that we need to hit those. But it's such a broader range spectrum. And as you were mentioning, when you started your business, the first year, you weren't taking any money from it. You're reinvesting back into the business to continue to build that vision or future that you're looking for with your business. And it's such a mindset shift from I'm collecting a check every 2 weeks. I'm looking at my goals for the day or the week or maybe the quarter. And not that those don't exist from business ownership. It's just a different frame of mind and having to kind of reapply some of those principles that we're doing, in corporate and reapply them or refocus them from a business ownership perspective. But I think that mindset's the first thing. If you get yourself in the proper mindset to be a business owner, then now I can start taking the actions to actually make those things come to play. I think the other thing, just the action part of it, there are so many options. I mean, in franchising, I think I've heard it's 4,500 or more different franchise opportunities. Then not to put in not to look past the opportunity of just starting something on your own as well. There's many opportunities that we could all jump into, but at the end of the day, it takes action, and we can evaluate until we don't do anything, or we can take action. And really, every successful entrepreneur I've either listened to on a podcast or read a book or met in person, they just started and then they stuck with it until they became successful. That's really business ownership is really those who are willing to stick with it the long run, continue making improvements along the way and learning from failures or poor decisions and whatnot. But it's those who stuck with it for the long game. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, that is great advice. And to your point, right? Action. It's all about action. It's building momentum. I did a show way back when we talked about goal planning, and goal planning is great, but goal planning in many cases wasn't working for me because there were no action steps. Lose 20 pounds, great. All right, I got a whole year to figure out what the heck to do. So it's almost building habits, and those habits could be spending 15 minutes every morning before work, Maybe before even you brush your teeth, you wake up and you do a little research. The mindset shift is huge. Walking in, people, I hate my job. I'm looking for a franchise. Got to cover my 200K salary. Can that be done the first month? And it's just like, hold on a sec. What are we trying to do here? So it's really taking a step back. And not everyone is built or made for business ownership. I hate to say that, but it's true. And that's what you get from me. And it sounds like from you as well, where you have to be direct, but why set someone up for failure? I mean, hey, these are some changes that if they are made, maybe it's something we revisit. But business ownership isn't because, I don't like my current situation, so the grass is going to be greener. That's definitely not the case. The mindset shift is big. Create those habits, learn, educate. To your point, you nailed it. I think that's some great advice, and you don't have to figure it all out in one shot. You'll get there little by little. And I think the franchise, in my opinion, gives you the unfair advantage because it's all laid out for you and you got the support. I have a question. I'm stuck here. What do I need to do? Where should my COGS be at? Close ratio on leads, like all that. You have a team. You mentioned national conference, national convention. That is, in my opinion, a mastermind. It has nothing to do with the Pain or Pain Easy. This is a networking event. This is everyone's bringing backgrounds from, you had a painting background. I had a Wall Street background. Everyone's bringing all these different and great experiences to the table. That alone, in my opinion, is priceless because now you have this mastermind. Now you have this network of individuals that you can build off of, share experiences, ideas, maybe hook up with your local neighbors at Pain Easy and go together on a marketing plan, share staff on a large commercial job. There's so many advantages that I think people overlook. And that alone, I mean, you can't pay for that. I mean, that is just, to me, it's priceless. And then one of the major advantages that franchising brings to the table, Pain Easy brings to the table. And just wanted to kind of bring that story home. Like, that's huge. There's so much benefit. I can't even express, what I got out of it and what I hear others getting out of it. As we wrap up the show, and I really appreciate all the insights, any other kind of last piece of advice you'd like to share with the listeners before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, if you're at a place where you're evaluating an opportunity, take that action, take the next steps. As you were mentioning, the grass isn't necessarily greener, but I find if you've been, had a background in a competitive nature, maybe it was sports, maybe it was academics, maybe it was music, that you were a competitive person, you've been competitive now in your corporate life, put those things to play. Bet on yourself, go all in, and go after whatever your goals or dreams are, because it will be rewarding in the end. And, I think that's the awesome part about franchising, as you mentioned. It's kind of the shortcut or the easier button versus other options. And so just go after it. Make those goals and dreams come to fruition through your hard work and efforts.
Listen to the Franchise Freedom Podcast for the latest tips and strategies on franchising.